My husband didn't ask if I was feeling better. He didn't ask whether I could stand without pain. He didn't even glance at the hospital bracelet I still hadn't taken off. Instead, he stood at the foot of our bed, checked something on his phone, and said the sentence that quietly changed the next 24 years of our marriage. My family will be here Saturday. 14 people this time. They'll stay until the end of the month. Make sure everything's ready. I actually smiled. Not because it was funny, because I genuinely believed he had to be joking. 3 days earlier, surgeons had spent nearly 6 hours repairing the torn muscles and damaged discs in my lower back after an accident that had left me barely able to walk. The discharge papers were still folded inside my nightstand drawer. The words "strict recovery" were printed across the top in bold capital letters. No lifting, no prolonged standing, no bending, no housework, no unnecessary physical strain. My doctor had looked me straight in the eye before I left the hospital. If you ignore these instructions, you'll undo everything we accomplished in surgery. So naturally, my husband wanted me to cook, clean, grocery shop, wash laundry, prepare bedrooms, entertain guests, and somehow host 14 people under one roof. I searched his face for any sign of humor. There wasn't one. "Grant?" I said carefully. "I can barely get out of bed by myself." He slipped his phone into his pocket. "They've already requested vacation from work. I can't tell them not to come?" I blinked. "You can't? Or you won't?" His jaw tightened just enough for me to recognize the answer before he spoke. "They're coming. Figure it out." Then he walked out of the bedroom, just like that. No discussion, no apology, no concern, only instructions. The bedroom felt strangely quiet after he left. The ceiling fan rotated lazily above me while afternoon sunlight stretched across the comforter. I rested both hands over the thick surgical brace wrapped around my waist and waited for the anger to come. Instead, I felt something much colder. Confusion. Because this wasn't really about the family visit. Not anymore. It was about the realization that somewhere over the last 2 decades, my husband had stopped seeing me as his partner. I'd become part of the furniture. Something dependable. Something that simply handled everything, without needing appreciation, without needing rest, without needing permission to exist as a person. That night I couldn't sleep. Every movement sent sharp pain through my lower back. The medication dulled the ache but couldn't quiet my thoughts. So I lay there listening to Grant snore peacefully beside me while memories began lining up in my mind one after another. 24 summers. 24 Christmases. 24 Thanksgivings. Every holiday somehow happened inside our house. His parents, his older brother, his younger sister, their spouses, their children, their dogs, sometimes cousins, sometimes friends who were only staying a night. It always started with one extra guest. Then another. Then suddenly every bedroom was occupied. Air mattresses covered the living room floor, and our refrigerator looked like a grocery store before a snowstorm. Who planned every meal? Me. Who washed every towel? Me. Who remembered that his father couldn't eat spicy food, his mother refused dairy, his niece had a peanut allergy, his nephew only drank one specific brand of chocolate milk? Me. Every single time. Grant always described it the same way. Everyone just loves spending time here. It sounded sweet, until I realized they loved spending time there because someone else did all the work. That someone had always been me. I remembered one Christmas 15 years earlier. I'd spent almost 18 straight hours cooking. When dinner finally ended, I quietly slipped into the laundry room just to sit down for 5 minutes because my feet were throbbing. Grant's mother had opened the door. "There you are," she'd laughed. "We're out of clean serving spoons." "Not. Are you okay?" "Not. Sit down. You've done enough." Just another task, another expectation, another invisible piece of labor added to a mountain no one else seemed capable of seeing. Maybe that was the real problem. People don't usually notice the person carrying the weight until she finally sets it down. Around 1:30 in the morning, I reached for the glass of water beside my bed. Instead, my hand stopped halfway. My eyes drifted toward the old fireproof box sitting quietly on the top shelf of our bedroom closet. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were insurance papers, family documents, my parents' will, and something else I suddenly couldn't stop thinking about. The deed to this house. A house my parents had purchased decades before I ever met Grant. a house they left to me after they passed away. For reasons I couldn't quite explain, I suddenly wanted to read every single page again, because for the first time in 24 years, a small voice inside me whispered something I had spent far too long ignoring. What if this house wasn't as much his to promise away as everyone had always assumed? That single question kept me awake until sunrise. And by breakfast, I had already decided what my very first phone call would be. The first thing I did after Grant left for work wasn't make breakfast. It wasn't call my sister. And it definitely wasn't start preparing 14 beds. I picked up my phone and called the only person I trusted to tell me the truth, Margaret Ellis, the attorney who had handled both of my parents' estates nearly 9 years earlier. She answered on the third ring. Claire? Her voice carried the same calm confidence I remembered from sitting across her desk after my father's funeral. It's been a while. It has, I admitted. I need to ask you something. She heard it immediately. Whatever was in my voice made her soften. Are you all right? I've had surgery, and I think I've forgotten something important. There was a brief silence. What do you mean? My husband invited his entire family to stay with us while I'm recovering. Without asking? No. He informed me. Another pause. Then she asked the question that changed everything. Claire, whose house is it? I looked around my kitchen. The same oak cabinets my father installed himself. The dining table where my mother taught me multiplication. The window overlooking the maple tree I'd climbed as a little girl. I answered almost automatically. Ours. No. Her voice remained gentle. I didn't ask whose home it feels like. I asked whose property it is. My mouth went dry. It's mine. I inherited it. Correct. She didn't say another word for several seconds. She simply let that answer settle inside me. You've lived there since childhood, haven't you? Yes. And when your parents passed away, the title transferred directly to you. Yes. Has that title ever been changed? I don't think so. I stopped, because I suddenly realized something. Grant had handled nearly every bill after we married. Mortgage taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance. Somewhere over the years, I'd stopped looking at the paperwork entirely. Not because I didn't care, because I trusted him. Margaret spoke again. I'll email you a copy of the recorded deed. It'll take 5 minutes. True to her word, it arrived before we hung up. I opened the attachment. There it was. County seal. Official recording number. Property description. Then, my name. Only mine. No joint ownership. No shared title. No amendments. No transfers. Nothing. For years, I'd unconsciously started calling it our house. Grant called it our house. His family called it the family house. Somehow, that tiny change in language had quietly erased the fact that it had never belonged to anyone except me. I don't know why that realization hurt so much. Maybe because I'd been surrendering pieces of myself so gradually that I hadn't noticed they were disappearing. Margaret cleared her throat. Claire, I need to ask another question. Go ahead. When was the last time someone asked whether hosting those visits was convenient for you? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Not because I couldn't answer, because I couldn't remember a single time. Not once. Not in 24 years. She didn't sound angry. She sounded disappointed. Not in me. For me. You've been recovering from major surgery for less than a week. Your responsibility right now is healing. Not entertaining. I know. No. I don't think you do. That sentence landed harder than I expected, because she was right. Somewhere along the way, I'd convinced myself that taking care of everyone else was simply what good wives did, even if it meant ignoring my own pain. Margaret continued, Tell me exactly what your surgeon ordered. I read every restriction from the discharge papers. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said quietly, If you host 14 people under those conditions, you're choosing their comfort over your recovery. I stared out the kitchen window. The bird feeder my father had built still hung from the old maple tree. The paint had faded, but it was still there, just like the promises I'd made to myself over the years. Promises I'd quietly broken every time someone needed something from me. I don't want to fight, I whispered. You don't have to fight. You just have to stop volunteering to lose. Those words echoed in my head long after the call ended. For nearly an hour, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was completely silent. No television, no music, just the soft ticking of the old wall clock. For the first time, I wasn't making excuses for Grant. I wasn't telling myself he was under pressure or that he didn't realize how much work went into hosting everyone. Because deep down, he knew. He had watched me do it every single year. He simply never had to participate in it. That's when another memory surfaced. 3 summers ago, I'd developed pneumonia halfway through his family's visit. I was running a fever of 102. I could barely stand. Grant's mother had handed me a grocery list anyway. You know where everything is. I'd gone. I'd pushed the cart through the supermarket, shaking so badly that a cashier asked if I wanted her to call someone. I smiled, told her I was just tired. Looking back, I wasn't tired. I was trained to believe everyone else's comfort mattered more than my own health. That realization made my chest tighten, not with anger, with grief. For the woman I'd been, the woman who believed love had to be earned every single day through exhaustion. I looked back at the deed on my laptop one last time. Then I opened a blank notebook. Across the first page, I wrote 6 words, things I will never ignore again. The list began with only one sentence. My recovery comes before anyone's vacation. By the time Grant pulled into the driveway that evening, the notebook already contained the outline of a plan, not a plan for revenge. A plan for finally protecting the one person I had neglected for 24 years. Myself. People imagine that standing up for yourself happens in one dramatic moment. It doesn't. Most of the time, it looks like quietly making phone calls while the person you're protecting yourself from has no idea your life is changing. By Thursday morning, I had already made 3. Grant thought I was resting. I was, just not in the way he imagined. The first call was to my surgeon's office. My follow-up appointment had originally been scheduled for the following week, but I asked if there was any possibility of moving it sooner. The nurse called back within an hour. Dr. Reynolds would actually like to see you tomorrow, Friday morning. Perfect. The second call was to my insurance company. During my hospital stay, the case manager had mentioned something I'd barely listened to at the time. Temporary recovery accommodations, private rehabilitation suites designed for patients who needed assistance during the first few weeks after surgery. At the time, I had laughed politely. I'll recover at home. Home. What a strange word that suddenly felt. The representative checked my file. You qualify for a 14-day recovery residence. There would be daily wellness checks, physical therapy access, meal delivery if needed. I closed my eyes. When could I move in? We have an opening Friday afternoon. I booked it immediately. The third phone call took the longest. It wasn't because the conversation was difficult. It was because I wanted to be absolutely certain every detail was legitimate. I called a local flooring company. The hardwood in our upstairs hallway had been separating for years. My father had planned to replace it before he got sick. After he passed away, life happened. Then work, then marriage, then everyone else's priorities. The manager scheduled an inspection. I should warn you, he said. If we replace the flooring, nobody can safely stay inside that section of the house for several days. I sat up a little straighter. I'm sorry. What did you say? The finish releases strong fumes while curing. We never recommend residents remain inside during that stage. He explained everything. Dust containment, ventilation, safety requirements, liability, nothing unusual, nothing dishonest. Simply standard procedure. I thanked him and booked the work. Not because I was trying to stop anyone from visiting, because the repairs genuinely needed to be done. For years, I was simply choosing for once to put my own house ahead of everyone else's convenience. That afternoon, I packed one small suitcase. It took nearly an hour. Not because I had so much to bring, because every movement reminded me my body was still healing. A sweatshirt, comfortable clothes, medication, heating pad, medical paperwork. The framed picture of my parents that always sat beside my bed. I don't know why I packed that last one. Maybe because wherever I was going, I wanted them with me. Grant came home just before 6. He walked into the bedroom while I was folding another sweater. Packing already? I smiled faintly. For the weekend? He nodded. I figured you'd want to get everything organized before everyone arrives. I looked down at the suitcase. He genuinely believed. I was packing to make hosting easier. Not once did he ask whether I was packing because I planned to leave. I'll manage, I answered quietly. Satisfied, he disappeared downstairs. A few minutes later, I heard him laughing on the phone. His mother. I recognized her voice even through the floorboards. She was already assigning bedrooms, deciding who would sleep where, planning breakfasts, talking about family game nights, as though none of it required another human being to make it happen, as though meals appeared by themselves. Beds changed their own sheets, bathrooms cleaned themselves. I listened for several minutes. Not once. Not one single time. Did anyone ask how I was recovering? By Friday morning, my doctor's appointment was over. Dr. Reynolds reviewed my incision carefully before looking directly at me. "You've been following the restrictions?" I hesitated. "Mostly." His eyebrows lifted. "Mostly?" "My husband's family is arriving this weekend." His expression changed immediately. "How many people?" I almost laughed. 14. He removed his glasses. "Claire, you understand that's completely incompatible with your recovery?" "I do now?" He nodded slowly. "I'm putting this in writing." He printed a new medical recommendation. This one couldn't have been clearer. Patient requires a quiet recovery environment. Visitors should be kept to an absolute minimum. Physical household responsibilities are medically prohibited. He signed it himself, stamped it, handed it across the desk. "Don't let anyone convince you this isn't serious." I won't. And for the first time, I actually meant it. By late afternoon, I had settled into the recovery residence. It wasn't luxurious, just peaceful. Wide hallways, comfortable bed, large windows overlooking a small garden, no dirty dishes waiting in the sink, no grocery lists taped to the refrigerator, no expectations. Only silence. That evening, I drove home one last time. Grant had gone to meet his brother for dinner. The house was empty. I walked slowly through every room, the guest bedrooms, the kitchen, the dining room where I'd served hundreds, maybe thousands of meals over the years. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply finished. On the kitchen island, I left one envelope. Inside were 3 things. A copy of my doctor's updated recovery orders, my temporary address, and a short handwritten note. "Grant, I'm following my doctor's instructions. The flooring work begins tomorrow morning, and I'll be recovering where I can actually heal. I hope your family enjoys their visit. We'll talk when everyone has gone home. Nothing more, nothing less." I placed my house key beside the envelope. Not because I was leaving forever, because I wanted him to understand something. For 24 years, he had assumed I would always stay and quietly make everything work. Tomorrow, for the first time in our marriage, he was about to discover what happened when I didn't. I woke up Saturday morning to birds instead of doorbells. No rushing footsteps. No suitcases dragging across hardwood floors. No one calling my name before I'd even opened my eyes. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like medicine. The nurse checked my incision just after breakfast and smiled. "You're moving much better today." "I actually slept." She nodded knowingly. "Recovery is amazing when people are allowed to recover." I smiled back. If only she knew how profound that simple sentence really was. Around 9:30, my phone began vibrating across the bedside table. Grant. I watched it ring until it stopped. 30 seconds later, it rang again, then again. By the 4th call, I knew something had happened. I answered. "What did you do?" he demanded. "No hello. No how are you feeling?" "Just anger." I remained calm. "What happened?" "My parents are standing outside the house. So are my brother's family and Melissa's cousins. They can't stay there." I frowned. "My cousins?" He sighed in frustration. "My sister's family. They're all here. The flooring crew says the upstairs is closed. There's equipment everywhere, and they told us the house isn't safe to stay in." I closed my eyes for a second. "I told you the work started today. You never said it would affect the visit." "I told you I couldn't host 14 people. You said no one could change their plans." Silence, just heavy breathing on the other end. Finally, he spoke again. "So where am I supposed to put everyone?" I answered honestly. "I don't know. I've never had to figure that out before." Then I ended the call. Not because I wanted to hurt him, because for 24 years, I'd always been the one expected to solve every problem. This one belonged to him. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was his mother. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Claire." Her voice was tight with disbelief. "We've been driving for nearly 7 hours. The children are exhausted. Your husband says you're staying somewhere else." "I am." "Well, when are you coming back?" "Not until my doctor clears me." A stunned silence followed. But who's making lunch? I honestly thought I'd misheard her. I'm sorry? Lunch. Everyone's hungry. For just a moment, I forgot every speech I'd practiced, every careful response. Instead, I simply stared out the window. Because after everything, after the surgery, after the doctor's warnings, after knowing I could barely stand for 15 minutes, the first concern she'd expressed about me was lunch. I took a slow breath. There are restaurants. But we always eat together. Not this year. Her voice sharpened. This is very unlike you. No, I replied softly. It's actually the first honest thing I've done in a very long time. She hung up. The messages didn't stop. Grant's brother wanted to know where extra blankets were. His sister couldn't remember which grocery store sold organic baby food. His father couldn't find the garage door remote. Question after question. Problem after problem. Normally, every one of those messages would have come to me, and every one of them would have received an answer within minutes. This time, I didn't reply. By evening, my phone had gone completely quiet. I wondered if everyone had finally settled in. Sunday afternoon, Chloe called. Our daughter sounded confused. Mom? Grandma called. I smiled weakly. I figured she might. She said you've abandoned the family. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because hearing those words out loud made them sound almost ridiculous. Did she tell you I had surgery? She mentioned it. Like it was a minor detail. So Chloe was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that brought tears to my eyes. You know what I remember most about those family visits? What? You never sat down. I closed my eyes. She continued. I was little, but I noticed. You were always cooking, cleaning, running to the grocery store, making beds. Everyone else watched movies. You washed dishes. My throat tightened. I used to wonder why Dad never helped. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, she whispered, I'm glad you finally chose yourself. After we hung up, I cried. Not loud, not dramatically, just quietly, because my daughter had seen what I'd spent years pretending wasn't happening. The next 3 days passed peacefully. Physical therapy in the mornings, walks through the courtyard, books I'd never had time to finish. For the first time in decades, no one needed anything from me. Then Wednesday evening, Grant called again. His voice sounded completely different. No anger, no frustration, only exhaustion. I owe you an apology. I didn't interrupt. I've been grocery shopping every morning. I've cooked. I've done laundry. I've driven everyone everywhere. He let out a tired laugh. My mother has complained about the hotel pillows every single day. I couldn't help smiling. My father wanted different coffee. My brother's kids argued over bedrooms. My sister kept asking where things were. Another pause. I honestly don't know how you did this for 24 years. I looked out the window at the evening sun settling over the garden. Neither do I. His voice cracked slightly. I thought everyone just came to spend time together. I never realized. You were the reason everything worked. I felt something inside me loosen, not because everything was suddenly fixed, but because for the first time, he wasn't defending himself. He was finally seeing me, and I realized something else. The hardest part wasn't making people respect your boundaries. The hardest part was believing you deserved them in the first place. The following Friday, my doctor officially cleared me to return home. As I packed my suitcase, Grant sent one final message. Everyone's gone. The house is quiet. Whenever you're ready, I'd like to talk. I stared at those words for a long moment, because something told me the conversation waiting for me inside that house wasn't going to change just our marriage. It was about to change the entire family. I came home on a Monday morning. The house was cleaner than I'd left it. Not perfect, just lived in. There were coffee mugs in the sink, a blanket folded over the couch, a grocery receipt sitting on the kitchen counter. For the first time in years, those little signs of life hadn't been left for me to clean up immediately. Grant met me at the front door. He looked exhausted. His eyes were bloodshot. The dark circles underneath them made him look 10 years older. I missed you, he said quietly. I nodded. I know. He reached for my overnight bag, without thinking, without being asked. It was such a small thing, yet somehow it felt larger than every bouquet of flowers he'd ever bought me. For the next few days, neither of us rushed the conversation. Healing takes time, not just for a back that had been cut open, but for a marriage that had slowly drifted into something neither of us had noticed until it finally broke. Wednesday evening, I asked him to invite everyone back. His parents, his brother, his sister, just for dinner. Grant looked surprised. Are you sure? Yes. There are some things I want everyone to hear together. Saturday arrived. This time, there were no overnight bags, no suitcases, no assumptions. Everyone knocked before entering. Even that felt different. Linda handed me a homemade pie. George brought flowers from his garden. His brother offered to help set the table before anyone asked. Small gestures, but I noticed every one of them. Dinner was quiet, almost too quiet. Everyone seemed to be waiting for someone else to speak first. After dessert, I stood slowly and carried a small storage box into the living room. Grant watched me with a puzzled expression. So did everyone else. I placed the box on the coffee table. Inside were folders, one for each person. George adjusted his glasses. Linda frowned. Grant looked at me. What's this? I'd like everyone to read it. No speeches, no accusations, just paper. The room filled with the sound of folders opening. The first page contained only one title, 24 years. The second page listed every family visit since our wedding. Dates, lengths of stay, number of guests. The third page showed grocery costs, year after year. Then utility bills, repair expenses, extra furniture, holiday meals, school vacations, emergency purchases, everything. I'd spent several evenings putting it together after returning home, not because I wanted revenge, because numbers don't argue. They simply exist. Page after page, receipt after receipt, photograph after photograph. There was a picture of me standing at the stove on Christmas morning while everyone else opened presents. Another showed me carrying coolers into the backyard barbecue with stitches still visible from a surgery years earlier. There were grocery receipts longer than my arm. Hotel reservations I'd quietly paid for when someone else's plans fell apart. Furniture we'd bought because guests needed more comfortable beds. One page simply listed hours: cooking, cleaning, laundry, shopping, driving, preparing bedrooms, cleaning bathrooms, hosting birthdays, organizing holidays. Total estimated hours over 24 years, more than 18,000. No one spoke. George turned another page. Linda stopped halfway through the folder. Grant never looked up. Finally, I broke the silence. I have one question. Everyone looked at me. Can any of you remember asking me, even once, whether I wanted all of this? No one answered. I looked around the room, not with anger, just curiosity. I honestly want to know. When did anyone ask if I was tired? More silence. When did anyone ask if hosting worked for me? Nothing. Grant slowly closed his folder. His voice barely rose above a whisper. We didn't. I nodded. No, you didn't. I spent 24 years believing being loved meant making life easier for everyone else. I was wrong. It should never cost someone their health or their voice. Linda wiped at her eyes, something I'd never seen before. I thought, she began quietly, I honestly thought you enjoyed doing it. I smiled sadly. I enjoyed having family. I didn't enjoy disappearing. That sentence hung in the room. Heavy, honest, impossible to argue with. George cleared his throat. I suppose we got comfortable. Grant finally looked up. No, I got comfortable. This wasn't their responsibility. It was mine. He turned toward me. I'm sorry. I should have protected you. I should have noticed. I should have helped. His apology wasn't dramatic, Ashley. There were no grand promises, no tears, just truth. Sometimes truth is louder than emotion. Before anyone left that evening, Grant spoke again. There are going to be new rules. He looked at everyone equally. If you visit, you ask first. If you stay, you help. If Claire says she's tired, that ends the discussion. Nobody argued. Not one person. 6 months later, Thanksgiving looked completely different. Everyone brought food. George washed dishes without being asked. Grant cooked the turkey. His brother vacuumed before leaving. Linda hugged me goodbye at the front door. Then she smiled. Would next spring be all right if your father and I visited for just the weekend? Not. We'll be here. Not. Get the guest room ready, she asked. I smiled. I'd like that. After they drove away, Grant slipped his hand into mine. The house was quiet again. Peaceful. Home. He looked around the living room before quietly saying, I finally understand something. What's that? He smiled. A house isn't held together by walls. It's held together by the person everyone keeps expecting to carry them. I leaned against his shoulder. For the first time in 24 years, I wasn't carrying anyone. And somehow, that was the moment our family finally learned how to stand on its own. If this story reminded you that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary, then remember this: the people who truly love you may not like your boundaries at first, but they'll learn to respect them if they truly respect you.